Hello, and welcome to the EL Library Read Aloud of Nightbooks by J.A. White, read with permission from HarperCollins Publishers. So, today we are on Chapter 9 of the book, and yesterday we read Chapter 8, and let's just review a little bit about what happened, which I thought kind of Chapter 8 was kind of a boring chapter myself. But just a little bit about what happened. So mostly it was about conversation between Alex and Yasmin. Alex is trying to, or he thinks that Yasmin and him are going to become kind of friendly, but Yasmin quickly puts a stop to that. And she lets him know that she's really not interested in being friends with him. And then the rest of the book is about, the rest of the chapter is about Alex and Natasha. Once Alex is in the reading room with Natasha and she is in her blue kind of, the diffuser going and everything, she starts questioning Alex about his past and about why he has a problem with being different than the others. And Alex really doesn't want to talk to her about that, but she does convince him to tell her a little bit about why he has a problem with that, and he just keeps saying that he just wants to be like everybody else. He just wants to be what a normal boy is. He just wants to be like the other kids. And Natasha tells him that there is a beautiful darkness in him that she sees, and that's not a bad thing, and that he will have trouble escaping that beautiful darkness. And they keep talking, and then they get into talking about the beautiful darkness that is in the apartment, and that if this beautiful darkness does indeed exist within the apartment, and it keeps the apartment running, how does it thrive on nightmares? And Alex kind of says, well, are you telling me that the apartment is actually alive? And Natasha smirks and says, it's a crazy idea, but obviously that she's keeping something from him, and that maybe Alex should write a story about it. So that's kind of where the chapter ended. Not much happening, just lots of conversation between characters in that chapter. So that is where Chapter 8 ended. Chapter 9 is called What Grows with No Light. So here we go. Alex's new life in apartment 4E settled into a predictable routine. During the day, he pretended to write in the library while combing the stacks for another entry written by the mysterious girl. It was slow going. Not only did Alex need to examine every page of every book, but he kept getting distracted by the stories themselves, often losing himself in reading for hours on end. It was the only way he could escape the apartment. At night, Alex read aloud while Natasha sat in her misting room. She didn't offer any more information about the purpose of the blue mist, and Alex didn't ask, though he did develop a theory. After each story, the witch listened to the wall for a moment and then patted it like an obedient steed. Alex didn't completely buy her explanation about the dark magic of the apartment being appeased by his narrative offerings, but he kept these doubts to himself. No good could come from questioning her. Besides, he liked sharing his stories. Maybe Natasha was overly fond of correcting him, especially if the story contained any magic, but at least Alex didn't have to worry about the witch thinking he was a freak for having such a dark imagination. As Natasha said again and again, they were one and the same. The same darkness that runs through Natasha's veins runs through my own, Alex thought. It scared him. Alex wished he could talk to Yasmin about all of this and share his exciting discovery in the library, but she continued to spurn his attempts at friendship. Eventually he gave up, and they each settled into their section of the apartment. Alex in the library, Yasmin in the place behind the coat closet door. They barely exchanged a word all day. Alex grew lonely with only his thoughts to keep him company. These inevitably turned to his family. He missed them so much. Days were bad, nights were worse. The fact that his family was only 4 floors away didn't make him feel any better. They might as well have been on Saturn. Sometimes he imagined their reunion, playing it in his head like the end of a cheesy movie. I knock on our apartment door. Mom and Dad answer. They don't hug me at first. They're in shock. They can't believe it's really their son, safe and sound. And then it starts. The tears, the hugs, the kisses. Even John gives me an affectionate fist tap. Alex longed to make this fantasy a reality, but there was only one way to do it. Escape. He wished he could search the apartment more thoroughly to see if he had missed a clue, but it was impossible. Lenore could be anywhere. Besides, if there was an exit, he knew exactly where it would be. Through Natasha's bedroom door. Alex doubted that there was anything special about the actual bedroom itself. His interest was in the magical room, accessed by the bone key. He had only seen Natasha enter this way once, and she had checked around carefully before slipping the bone key inside, shooing Alex away when she saw him standing at the end of the hallway. Whatever was behind that door was so important that she didn't want Alex catching a single glimpse. He was dying to know what it was, just like he was dying to know what Yasmin did in the coat closet each day. Unfortunately, the only way to find out was to steal Natasha's bone keys, which she kept in her pocket at all times. Alex wasn't desperate enough to try something that crazy. Not yet, at least. Days passed. Alex searched the library, told his stories, dreams of escape. He imagined that things would have continued in this fashion if it hadn't been for the danglers. Alex had been combing the stacks all morning with nothing to show for it but blurry eyes and an aching back. He cleaned his glasses on the bottom of his shirt while considering the number of books waiting to be searched. Even after a week, he had barely made a dent. This is going to take forever, he thought. He had found, to this point, exactly 6 other entries by the mystery writer, who he had dubbed Unicorn Girl. As far as Alex could tell, she had shelved the books at random, and as there were no dates to tell him precise chronological order, he relied instead upon the rising desperation in their tone. Thus, the earliest 2 entries, Alex believed, were drawings of unicorns, little more than cheerful graffiti in the margins. The next one was a list. Things I miss. Mom, Dad, ice cream, Jude, sometimes, raindrops. And there's the list right there. Alex, whose mind often wandered to his life before the apartment, knew exactly how Unicorn Girl felt. He also thought it was funny how she put Jude, who he assumed was her brother, after ice cream. It made him feel like he knew her a little bit. The 4th entry, on the other hand, just made him sad. 5 sentences formed a heart around a carefully rendered sketch of a unicorn pendant. My special pin, from Mom and Dad. I wear it close to my heart and touch it when I need to remember them better, when they get fuzzy in my brain. I will never, ever take it off. Fuzzy in my brain? Alex wondered. Does that mean she's starting to forget her parents? How long has she been Natasha's prisoner at this point? According to the 5th entry, even Unicorn Girl didn't know. Today, I tried to figure out how long I've been here. Couldn't. The days and nights get all mixed up. I asked the witch how long, but she wouldn't tell me. The witch don't tell me anything. She just wants her scary story every night. I'm so tired of reading her scary stories. I hate her. I've been looking for a spell book, thinking if I could do magic, then I could make her pay. But the only books here are stories. Stupid, useless stories. I seen a movie where this guy with a big beard made scratches in a prison wall so he could remember how long he'd been there. I should have done that, except I never thought it would be this long. And now, it's too late to start. Just thinking about this entry depressed him. When Unicorn Girl had first been captured, she believed that Natasha was a lonely woman who would eventually set her free. That hope and optimism was gone now. She had changed. Is this what's going to happen to me? Alex wondered. He hoped not. And if the final entry was any indication, maybe he could avoid such a fate. I escape tonight. Everything is set. I escape tonight, Alex thought, the 3 simple words quickening his heart. Everything is set. That means she had a plan. If so, it was entirely conceivable that she wrote it down. The answer that Alex sought might be waiting somewhere in the library. It was great news, spectacular news. If Unicorn Girl had really written her plan down, and if he could find it. He had the sneaking suspicion that it wasn't going to happen today. He considered taking a break from his search and reading for a while. A slim volume, titled The Maze Inside the Labyrinth, had caught his eye, but instead sat at the table and opened his nightbook. I should try to write something, he thought, just in case Natasha starts getting suspicious. This nightbook, the one with the peeling cover, was the only one he had used since coming to apartment 4E. He had already read most of the stories, but Alex wasn't worried. He still had the 2 other nightbooks in his backpack. Last night, he had flipped through them, just to see what was there. Some of the stories had been written when he was only 8 or 9, and Alex didn't think that they were good enough to share. Others were a little more than unfinished ideas that had fizzled out like detective fireworks. Even excluding those, however, Alex still had over 40 stories in the bank. That's plenty for now, he thought, closing the nightbook. No need to worry about it. There was a knock at the door. Alex pushed his chair back, unsure who it could be. When Yasmin came to tell him that it was dinner time every night, she simply walked into the library without knocking, and although Natasha had never actually checked on him, Alex doubted that she would be so polite. Could it be someone else? He thought. Maybe the apartment lured a new kid inside. He inched the door open and peeked cautiously through the gap. It was Yasmin. Usually her face was flat and expressionless, as though her emotions were a secret she wanted to keep hidden from the world. Today, however, Yasmin was visibly upset. She rocked back and forth on her heels while twisting the bottom of her t-shirt into a knot. "I need your help," she said. "With what?" Alex asked. Something happened, and..." Yasmin pulled the brim of her Met's cap tight over her forehead and closed her eyes as though trying to wish the entire situation away. "This is a mistake," she said, wrapping her arms around herself. "I'm sure I can figure out a way to fix it on my own. I shouldn't expect you to... She took a few steps back. "Yasmin," Alex said, "let me help. Whatever it is, you don't have to do it alone." She stared at him a moment with a dubious expression on her face. Finally, she nodded. "I'll have to get the extra pair of goggles first," she said. "One of the lenses is cracked, but I think it'll still work." "Why do I need goggles?" "To protect your eyes." "I know what goggles do. I meant..." "And see if you can find a pair of gloves," Yasmin said, cutting him off. "Thick ones." "What exactly are we doing?" Alex asked. "It'll be easier to explain once we're inside," Yasmin said. She smiled weakly. "You wanted to know what I do every day, right? Well, you're about to find out." Once Alex had tracked down 2 mismatched gloves, one bright pink, the other with a small hole in the left pinky, he met Yasmin in front of the coat closet door. She handed him a pair of yellow-tinted goggles that looked like something you might wear during science lab. Alex slipped them over his eyes. The band was too tight around his head, but he didn't want to take the time to adjust it. He was afraid that any hesitation might give Yasmin the opportunity to change her mind. "Let's go," Yasmin said. "What about her?" Alex asked, nodding his head toward Lenore. The cat sat in the middle of the living room floor, watching them with interest. She had stayed out of Alex's way since he told Natasha that he needed solitude in order to work, but every so often he caught her staring at him with cold green eyes. The witch already seemed to dislike the cat, and by stripping Lenore of her library duty, Alex had diminished her value even further. If she had a chance at redemption, he was certain she would take it. "Lenore's going to come whether we like it or not," Yasmin said. "It'll be much worse if we try to lock her out. Then Natasha will really think we're up to something." She slid the bone key into the keyhole and pulled the door open. The expensive coats that normally weighted down the rod were no longer there. Instead, Alex saw an open expanse of darkness, like a cavern. The dimensions were impossibly huge, but he wasn't as fazed by that as he would have been a week ago. Lenore passed between them and vanished into the murk. "You can't see anything at the start," Yasmin said, "so just follow my footsteps and try to keep up." "There's no light at all?" Alex asked. "Not the kind you're thinking of," she said. "That reminds me. Close the door behind you." Alex didn't like the idea of plunging them into total darkness, so when Yasmin turned around, he left the door open a crack. It made him feel a little better, knowing that there was still the slightest thread of light in this place. "We should have brought a flashlight," he said, following the echo of Yasmin's footsteps. That's the last thing you want to do," she said. "Besides, you don't really need it. Just keep walking straight. It's not far. See? You're about to pass through a big curtain here." Her voice was suddenly muffled. "It's on the other side." Alex, walking through the darkness with hands outstretched, felt something heavy and smooth hanging from the ceiling. It reminded him of those lead aprons that dentists made you wear when they x-rayed your teeth. There was a seam in its center. Alex slipped through it and gasped with wonder. Alex liked to write about things that didn't exist. He saw them clearly enough in his imagination, but in order to paint a picture in the reader's mind, he created links to the real world. For that reason, he might describe a monster as a scaly rat with wings, or compare the smell of a sun-baked zombie to a liverwurst sandwich left in a locker over summer vacation. The sight before him now was so remarkable, however, that there was nothing on earth with which to compare it. Alex could only describe it in terms of imaginary things: a phosphorescent garden on some alien planet, a neon forest hidden at the center of the earth. "What is this place?" Alex asked, staring slack-jawed at the long tables that stretched into the distance. From clay plots and long lacquer boxes grew a dizzying variety of flora whose violent colors exploded in the dark. In some cases, they resembled plants and flowers familiar to Alex. A lily, the color of hibiscus tea. Yellow sunflowers, like streaks of colored chalk on a blackboard. A tiny cactus, its needles tipped with red. In most cases, however, the plants were unlike anything that Alex had ever seen. Some breathed, some snapped, some chewed. The air was filled with the musty smell of growing things, but there was something slightly spoiled beneath it all, as though someone had committed a murder and hid the body to rot. Alex was both exhilarated and afraid. "It's a nursery," Yasmin said. Her white shirt glowed in the dark, like she was about to play a game of laser tag. "Well, that's what Natasha calls it, at least. Except these aren't normal plants, as you probably noticed. They're meant to grow at night. You put them under direct sunlight or even a light bulb, and they'd be dead in an hour. That's why we use blacklight instead." Long fluorescent tubes dangled above the tables. They gave off a faint, purplish glow. "Isn't blacklight what they use to make bloodstains show up at crime scenes?" Alex asked, remembering something he had read while doing research on forensic investigations for a story. "Is it?" Yasmin asked. He expected to hear disgust in her voice, just like other kids when his gruesome interest spilled into the conversation, but instead there was only mild interest. The only time I've ever seen black lights in the real world was at this indoor mini-golf place. All the windmills and golf balls and stuff glowed in the dark, just like this, except without the magic plants. "These plants are magic?" Alex asked. "It's a witch's nursery," Yasmin said. "What did you expect? Geraniums? Come on, we need to hurry." She set off between the tables, walking at a fast clip. Alex had to practically run to keep up. "If these plants are magic," he asked, "what do they do?" "Nothing yet," Yasmin said. "They're just ingredients. You have to put them together the right way for anything to happen." An electric thrill ran through Alex's body. "Are you talking about magic potions?" he asked. "According to Natasha, no one wants potions anymore," Yasmin said. "Customers refuse to put up with the taste. These days, it's all essential oils. People put a few drops in these misters, like the kind you use to make the room smell good, and breathe in the magic." She sighed, remembering something. "That reminds me. I have to check the distillers. I started a new batch of wealth oil yesterday." "You're the one who makes them?" Alex asked in amazement. "Anyone can do it," Yasmin said, though he thought he detected a hint of pride in her voice. "There's no magic involved. You just have to follow the recipe, like cooking." "What about the blue oil that Natasha puts in her diffuser?" Alex asked. "Are you the one who—" "No way," Yasmin said. "I make the harmless stuff, like the oil that will give you good luck on a job interview. Natasha's not stupid. She doesn't teach me how to make anything that can hurt her." "Do you at least know what the blue oil is for?" Alex asked. Yasmin walked faster, clearly uncomfortable with the change in topic. "Never really thought about it," she mumbled. "I have a theory," Alex said, catching up with her. "It's totally fairy tale stuff, but that doesn't mean I'm wrong. Natasha looks like she's, 28, 30? I think she's a lot older than that, and it's the blue mist that keeps her young. So many things start to make sense then. The way the apartment is decorated, the furniture, the wallpaper, those creepy little statues of kids. It's like a grandma's house, you know, and all those books in her library, some of them are ancient. I'm sure she's been collecting them for decades, maybe even centuries." Yasmin stopped short and turned to face him. "It's best not to talk about things like this," she said sharply. "It doesn't concern me, or you." Her eyes flitted around the room, and then settled on Alex, urging him to silence. Finally, he understood. "I forgot about Lenore. She's probably standing nearby, eavesdropping. The little spy will report anything we say about Natasha." "You're right," Alex said. "It's really none of my business what Natasha does." Yasmin gave him the slightest nod. "Now you get it." A tiny surge of joy sparked inside Alex. It felt good to talk to someone without using words. That was something friends did. "What did you need my help with?" he asked, as they started walking again. He fiddled with his goggles, which were beginning to fog up from the exertion. "Almost there," Yasmin said, "and don't take your goggles off. The light can really hurt your eyes." I'm surprised Natasha cared enough to give you them in the first place." "She doesn't care," Yasmin said. "I'm just no use to her if I'm blind." As they moved, Alex glanced over at the long tables, his eyes jumping from wonder to wonder. Small placards, like you might find in a regular greenhouse, sat in front of each planter. "Widow orchid. Mix water with snake venom. Spritz daily. Demon's mane. Feed dried tarantula legs when petals are open. Beware of acid. Nightberries. Plant in soil from freshly dug grave. Water with a child's tears. Great for baking." "You take care of all these plants by yourself?" Alex asked. "Yup." "Wow," he said. suddenly feeling guilty for his lazy days spent combing books in the library. That's a lot of work for one person. How do you keep up? I like to keep busy, Yasmin said. Always have. She paused to pluck a few needles from an orange herb and slip them in her pocket. It would be a lot easier if these plants weren't so fragile. Feed them the wrong thing, or at the wrong time, or in the wrong way, and bad things happen. Which is why I brought you here in the first place. She scratched the back of her neck. I screwed up. Big time. I was so tired, and it's hard to read those little signs in front of each plant with these goggles on, and I ended up feeding a snappy vine rat's blood instead of bat's blood. You have both? And cat's blood. There's a whole blood shelf. That's not the point. The point is, now the plant is sick. Sick? The good news is I know how to fix it. I'm sure Lenore's going to tell Natasha one way or the other, but I figure if everything is better already, that should help at least. Problem is, it isn't something I can fix on my own. We'll do it together then, Alex said. Yasmin removed her cap in order to fix a few strands of hair that had slipped free. Her face was ashen. You're nice, she said, and I appreciate your help, but this still doesn't change anything. I don't want to be your friend. I don't want any friends. Not anymore. There was no anger in the words, only sadness. Alex had assumed that Yasmin kept her distance because she thought he was a weirdo. Now he wondered if there was a different reason, something that didn't involve him at all. Why doesn't she want friends? Alex thought. He followed Yasmin deeper into the darkness. And that is the end of chapter 9. So we will be right back here for chapter 10 on Monday afternoon at 3 o'clock, right here on the Edward Little YouTube channel. Remember, you can catch up on all the previous chapters. They're all right there on the YouTube channel. And the link to that YouTube channel is always on Instagram and Facebook every day. So, have a great weekend, everyone. The weather is supposed to be wonderful. And I hope you can listen in again on Monday. Thank you.